British noir wasn't just about shadows and rain-soaked streets. It was about survival in a world still smoldering from war. While Hollywood polished its detectives and femme fatales, Britain gave us grit, guilt, and stories where desperation was the only currency. But which films from the 1940s really define this darker vision? And which ones still feel dangerous to watch today? Let's step into the fog-drenched alleys and find out. They Made Me a Fugitive, 1947. Trevor Howard, fresh from his heroic RAF roles, flips the script and becomes a broken ex-pilot tangled in crime. Imagine it? Post-war Britain, rationing still in effect, black markets running wild. Director Alberto Cavalcanti saw the chaos and turned it into pure noir gold. Howard plays Clem, a man who thinks he's too clever to be crushed by the system until the system slams back. The brilliance of They Made Me a Fugitive is its authenticity. Those shadows weren't imported from Hollywood backlots. They were Britain's bombed-out streets, real scars of war. You can almost smell the damp bricks and stale cigarette smoke. The plot moves with brutal inevitability. Clem falls in with a smuggling gang, refuses to play along with their nastier jobs, and gets framed for murder. Suddenly he's on the run, hunted by the law, and betrayed by everyone around him. Critics at the time didn't quite know what to make of it. Was it entertainment? Or was it a little too close to reality? Soldiers returning from the war saw themselves in Clem. Heroes discarded, left to rot in cramped flats while gangsters thrived. Cavalcanti wasn't just making crime drama, he was holding up a mirror. What seals this film's place in noir history is the ending. No redemption, no pat on the back. Just a man trapped in a cycle he can't escape. They Made Me a Fugitive wasn't a story, it was a warning. Brighton Rock, 1947. If They Made Me a Fugitive was grit, Brighton Rock was ice. Richard Attenborough's Pinky Brown is one of the coldest gangsters Britain ever put on screen. Forget Hollywood's charming rogues. This is a teenager with a razor blade in his pocket and dead eyes that never blink. The film, adapted from Graham Greene's novel, drops us into the seaside resort of Brighton. Sounds cheerful, right? But instead of candy floss and carnival rides, you get mobs, betrayals, and murders carried out under the neon lights. Attenborough's Pinky isn't just dangerous, he's unforgettable. His voice is soft, but his cruelty cuts harder than any knife. What makes Brighton Rock explosive is the moral vacuum at its core. Pinky marries a naive waitress not out of love, but to stop her from testifying against him. The tension builds around her innocence versus his corruption, and it's like watching a moth fly toward fire. Every scene feels like it could combust at any second. Censors were rattled, and audiences gasped. Could Britain really show a gangster this young, this merciless, and not punish him with cinematic justice? The ending, haunting and unresolved, shut the door on tidy moral lessons. Brighton Rock didn't just make noir British, it made it unforgettable. The funfair never looked so terrifying. The October Man, 1947. Here's a noir that doesn't rely on gangsters or gunshots. It's all about guilt eating a man alive. John Mills plays Jim Ackland, a man recovering from a bus crash that killed a child. He blames himself, and that guilt becomes a noose tightening around his neck. When he's accused of murder, the audience can't help but wonder, did he do it, or is he just broken enough to believe he did? Director Roy Ward Baker doesn't give us the glamorous side of noir. Instead, he leans into atmosphere, foggy parks, dimly lit lodgings, shadows that stretch longer than the truth. Mills is extraordinary, playing a man unraveling in slow motion, his self-doubt almost more dangerous than the police on his tail. The film was part of Britain's post-war wave of psychological dramas, and it hit nerves because it asked a question few dared to. What happens to men carrying invisible wounds from the war? Jim Ackland isn't a villain. He's a casualty of trauma who gets swallowed by circumstance. Critics praised the intelligence of the script, but noted how unsettling it felt. This wasn't escapism. It was too raw, too real, too close to the silent battles being fought across England in the late 1940s. By the end, The October Man leaves you with a bitter taste. It's not about who killed whom. It's about how guilt, once it takes root, doesn't let go. In a decade obsessed with rebuilding, this film whispered, "Some cracks never close." It Always Rains, on Sunday 1947. If you want noir soaked in domestic realism, this is the one. Forget private detectives. This story unfolds in an East End terraced house where a weary housewife hides her escaped convict lover in the spare room. Googie Withers is magnetic as Rose, a woman juggling family duties, nosy neighbors, and the suffocating monotony of ration book Britain. Director Robert Hammer crafts a thriller without car chases or flashy violence. The tension drips from ordinary moments. A husband who doesn't notice his wife's secret, a daughter sneaking out. A knock at the door that could ruin everything. Rain pours over the city, as if even the weather is complicit in the claustrophobia. What makes this film brutal isn't action, it's the truth it exposes. Women who kept homes together during the war were shoved back into roles of quiet domesticity, expected to smile through boredom. Rose doesn't smile. She risks everything for one last taste of passion. But passion in noir is always dangerous, and the longer she hides her lover, the more suffocating the tension becomes. When critics talk about kitchen sink noir, this is the blueprint. A story that's small in scale but massive in impact. It's about choices, sacrifices, and the ticking clock of inevitable disaster. It Always Rains on Sunday isn't just about crime. It's about post-war Britain itself, gray, weary, and haunted by secrets inside every brick house. Odd Man. Out 1947. This is the heavyweight. Directed by Carol Reed, Odd Man Out takes James Mason, gives him a bullet wound, and sends him stumbling through the streets of Belfast in what feels like a 2-hour fever dream. Mason plays Johnny McQueen, a wounded IRA man hunted after a botched robbery. But here's the genius. It's less about politics and more about humanity unraveling under pressure. The film unfolds like a nightmare. Snow blankets the city, alleys stretch endlessly, and every character Johnny meets is a reflection of society's desperation. Some help him, some exploit him, some betray him. Mason's performance is haunting, a man slowly losing blood, strength, and perhaps his grip on reality. Reed's direction is extraordinary. The camera lingers on faces, on shadows, on spaces that seem to close in. It's noir elevated into myth, a story that feels less like crime drama and more like an epic about fate chasing its prey. When it premiered, critics called it a masterpiece. American reviewers compared it to Dostoevsky, while British audiences recognized their own war-torn cities in every frame. The suspense isn't whether Johnny will escape, it's how many illusions he'll shatter on his way down. The ending? Devastating, unforgettable, and pure noir. No tidy wrap-ups, no heroic fade-outs. Just cold streets, cold choices, and a reminder that in noir, survival is never guaranteed. The Small Back Room, 1949. Powell and Pressburger are often remembered for their Technicolor dreams, like The Red Shoes and Black Narcissus. But in The Small Back Room, they ditch the color and dive straight into the shadows. This isn't a grand ballet of cinema. It's a claustrophobic portrait of one man's war with himself. David Farrar stars as Sammy Rice, a bomb disposal expert hobbling through life with a bad leg, a flask never far from reach, and a chip the size of Britain on his shoulder. When he's called upon to defuse a new German booby trap bomb, the tension doesn't just come from the wires he's cutting. It's from whether his own bitterness will blow up first. What makes The Small Back Room such a fascinating noir is its bleak honesty about the war's aftermath. Yes, it's about bombs, but it's also about bureaucracy, about brilliant men sidelined by injuries, about alcohol gnawing away at self-worth. Farrar's Sammy is not a glamorous hero. He's angry, insecure, and drowning, and that makes him unforgettable. The film's climax, the bomb disposal sequence, is so nerve-shredding, it still leaves modern audiences gripping their seats. Powell and Pressburger knew how to stretch tension like a live wire, and here, they proved they didn't need fantasy to unsettle you. Reality was more than enough. It's not the most celebrated of their films, but The Small Back Room is pure noir, flawed men, impossible choices, and victory that feels as hollow as defeat. Nightbeat, 1947. Here's a title that doesn't get enough attention, but it should. Nightbeat isn't about the glamorous underworld. It's about reporters pounding the streets of London after dark, chasing stories that might cost them more than ink. You've got newsroom cynicism, seedy clubs, and enough moral gray areas to make even hard-boiled Americans nod in approval. The post-war setting is key. Britain was rebuilding, but the newspapers had their own battlefield: corruption, crime, and the tug of war between truth and survival. The journalists in Nightbeat aren't heroic crusaders. They're opportunists, hustlers, and sometimes worse. That's what gives the film its edge. What makes this noir shine is the way it captures the atmosphere of late-night London. The streets glisten with rain, the pubs hum with whispers, and danger always seems a step away. Every scoop feels like it's bought at a price, and every character carries the exhaustion of a country trying to drag itself out of ruin. Critics at the time didn't shower it with praise, but modern viewers see it for what it is: a raw, unsentimental slice of noir that captures the paranoia of a world where information is power and truth is never pure. Nightbeat may not have the star power of other titles, but its blend of shadows, schemes, and weary souls makes it a must for anyone serious about British noir. It proves that the darkness wasn't just in alleyways, it was in headlines too. No Orchids for Miss Blandish, 1948. If there's a British noir that rattled cages more than most, it's this one. No Orchids for Miss Blandish tried to outdo America at its own game, and in some ways, it succeeded a little too well. Critics called it sordid, nasty, even a disgrace to the British film industry, which, of course, makes it a perfect entry on this list. Based on James Hadley Chase's infamous novel, the film aimed for a gangster epic dripping with grit. Instead of foggy London streets, it mimicked American noir with its kidnappings, mobsters, and ruthless violence. The problem? It was too convincing. British audiences weren't used to seeing this level of cruelty splashed across the screen. The plot follows a wealthy heiress abducted by a gang who see her as both ransom and bargaining chip. Jack LaRue plays the vicious mob boss with chilling menace, a performance that shocked critics for its unapologetic brutality. The film dives into themes of greed, power, and corruption without flinching. Reviewers tore it apart, but here's the thing. Scandal kept it alive. People flocked to see what the fuss was about. And over time, historians reevaluated it as an important, if controversial, landmark in British noir. What makes it fascinating today isn't just the story, but the fact that it revealed Britain's appetite for darker, more dangerous tales. It was accused of imitating America, but in doing so, it carved out a new lane, British noir that wasn't polite, but merciless. Mine Own Executioner, 1947. Forget detectives and gangsters. This one is about the noir inside your head. Mine Own Executioner stars Burgess Meredith as Felix Milne, a psychiatrist tangled up with a patient whose mental instability is spiraling toward violence. Sounds tame? Not in the hands of director Anthony Kimmins, who turned psychology into pure cinematic dread. The title says it all. The story asks whether people are doomed by their own demons, and whether even a professional mind doctor can stop someone from being their own downfall. The patient, played by Kieran Moore, is a war veteran scarred in more ways than one. When treatment fails, the line between doctor and victim blurs in terrifying ways. Post-war Britain was full of unspoken trauma. Soldiers came home with invisible wounds, and society had no idea how to deal with it. This film dared to stare straight at that reality, long before mental health was a common phrase. Instead of monsters in alleyways, the monster here is memory, guilt, and rage. Meredith anchors the film with quiet desperation, and Moore's performance is a powder keg ready to blow. Critics appreciated its intelligence, but audiences were unnerved. It was too close to real life. Mine Own Executioner doesn't give you car chases or shootouts. It gives you conversations that feel like interrogations, rooms that feel like prisons, and choices that have no good outcomes. That's noir stripped to the bone. The Fallen Idol, 1948. Before The Third Man, Carol Reed gave us this masterpiece of suspicion and shattered innocence. What makes The Fallen Idol unique in the noir canon is its perspective. It's told largely through the eyes of a child who witnesses too much and understands too little. That twist makes the darkness hit even harder. Ralph Richardson plays Baines, a butler idolized by his employer's young son. But when Baines's personal life unravels and tragedy strikes, the boy's loyalty collides with a reality he can't quite grasp. Suddenly, lies, half-truths, and whispered secrets pile up, creating a web of suspicion as tense as any gangster showdown. Reed's direction is brilliant. He fills the embassy setting with looming staircases, suffocating shadows, and overheard conversations that feel more sinister because they're misunderstood. Every corner hides danger, not from gangsters or thugs, but from gossip, judgment, and the fragility of reputation. What makes the film devastating is the way it exposes innocence as both precious and perilous. The child protagonist doesn't see noir the way we do. He sees confusion, loyalty, and betrayal. But the audience sees it all, and that dual vision makes the film unforgettable. Critics at the time hailed it as intelligent, sensitive, and daring. Today it stands as one of Reed's finest achievements, a film that proves noir didn't always need shadows in back alleys. Sometimes the scariest shadows are in the drawing rooms of the powerful. The Upturned Glass, 1947. James Mason owned British noir in the 1940s, and The Upturned Glass is a perfect example of why. Here, he plays Michael Joyce, a brain surgeon who slides into obsession after falling for a married woman. When tragedy strikes, his obsession mutates into revenge, and the film spirals into moral quicksand. What makes this one so compelling isn't just Mason's intensity. It's the way the story feels like a lecture in fate. Michael narrates the events of the film as if he's teaching a medical class, dissecting his own downfall like a case study. That eerie framing device turns the entire movie into a confession delivered straight to the viewer. The film dives deep into questions of morality and madness. Is Michael a victim of love, or was he always capable of violence? Mason plays him with such quiet restraint that when the dam bursts, the effect is chilling. There are no smoky nightclubs or mobsters here. It's noir stripped down to the battle inside one man's mind. Critics at the time called it too grim, but that grimness is the point. The Upturned Glass doesn't let you look away from how thin the line can be between healer and destroyer. In the pantheon of British noir, it's a gem often overlooked, but never forgotten by those who've seen it. Against the Wind, 1948. Noir meets espionage in this tense wartime thriller. Against the Wind tells the story of Belgian resistance fighters smuggled into occupied Europe by the British Special Operations Executive. On paper, it sounds like a patriotic adventure, but what unfolds is pure noir, betrayal, double-dealing, and the constant sense that the good guys might not be so good after all. Director Charles Crichton captures the paranoia perfectly. The film moves between safe houses, shadowy rendezvous points, and train rides where one wrong glance could mean death. The atmosphere is heavy with mistrust, because in this world, everyone has secrets, and some are willing to sell them. The standout here is the moral ambiguity. Instead of clean-cut heroes, we get operatives who are exhausted, afraid, and sometimes willing to sacrifice each other. The war setting intensifies the stakes, but the noir elements, deception, shifting loyalties, danger around every corner, are what make it gripping. Though not as famous as some other titles, Against the Wind remains a fascinating snapshot of how noir bled into the spy genre. It reminds us that wartime didn't just breed heroes. It bred opportunists, traitors, and moral compromises. Take My Life, 1947. Murder, mistaken identity, and a woman refusing to accept the easy answers, Take My Life has all the ingredients for a solid noir. Greta Gint plays a determined wife who sets out to prove her husband's innocence after he's accused of killing his old flame. Instead of waiting for the police to fix things, she dives headfirst into London's theater world, where egos, grudges, and lies run deep. What makes the film compelling is its unusual perspective. In most noirs, the male lead is the driver of the story. Here, it's the woman who refuses to back down, piecing together clues while the men around her bungle or accuse. Gint plays her with cool confidence, a refreshing change from the standard noir archetypes. The backdrop of the theater adds an extra layer of drama. Behind the curtains and costumes, there's a world of jealousy and deception, where the spotlight hides darker truths. The investigation unfolds like a performance itself, with Gint pulling back the velvet drapes to reveal betrayal after betrayal. Take My Life didn't get the international spotlight, but it showed that British noir could twist the formula and still deliver suspense. It's a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous lies are spoken not in alleys but under stage lights. My Brother's Keeper, 1948. Two convicts on the run, chained together, stumbling across the countryside, with police hot on their heels. That's the setup for My Brother's Keeper. And it's one of the most gripping fugitive noirs Britain ever produced. Jack Warner and George Cole star as the mismatched pair. One hardened, one naive, both desperate. The brilliance of the film lies in its simplicity. By keeping the convicts literally shackled together, every step they take ratchets up the tension. Do they trust each other? Do they hate each other? Can either survive if the other doesn't? The chain becomes a metaphor for fate, binding them closer as the noose of law closes in. Director Alfred Room fills the film with rural grit, farms, back roads, and hiding places that feel temporary and fragile. Unlike city noirs, which thrive on neon and alleyways, this one unfolds in fields and barns, proving noir isn't about location, it's about desperation. At its heart, My Brother's Keeper is a story of choices. Will survival drive the men to betrayal, or can desperation breed loyalty? The ending doesn't offer easy answers, and that ambiguity is exactly why it still resonates. It's a noir chase movie with brains and bite. The Third Man, 1949. And here we are, the crown jewel of British noir. The Third Man isn't just a great film, it's a towering monument of shadows, intrigue, and paranoia. Directed by Carol Reed, written by Graham Greene, and scored with that unforgettable zither theme, it takes post-war Vienna and turns it into a labyrinth of lies. Joseph Cotten plays Holly Martins, an American writer stumbling into a decaying city carved up by occupying powers. He's looking for his old friend, Harry Lime, only to discover that Lime, played with devilish charm by Orson Welles, might not be dead after all. The chase through bombed-out streets, the echoing footsteps in the sewers, the tilted camera angles, it's cinema at its most iconic. What makes The Third Man extraordinary isn't just the mystery, it's the moral rot. Harry Lime's famous speech about the Swiss and cuckoo clocks sums it up perfectly. Out of chaos comes profit, and morality is just an inconvenience. Welles turns Lime into a villain you can't look away from, charming, witty, and utterly corrupt. When it premiered, audiences were stunned. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece, and decades later, it's still studied, quoted, and imitated. It's noir that doesn't just crawl in the shadows, it redefines them. If you only see one British noir from the 1940s, make it this one. Just don't expect to forget it. So, there you have it. 15 films that prove British noir wasn't just keeping pace with Hollywood, it was rewriting the rules. These stories gave us wounded heroes, ruthless villains, and moral landscapes as foggy as the streets they walked. Which of these films shocked you the most? Or did we miss a favorite? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe, and keep your eyes on the shadows, because in noir, the truth is never where you expect it.